Hello, ladies, gentlemen, and persons in between. I'm back, and I'm here today to talk about what it is to be a man in this episode of Serious Issues. So it's been a while, hasn't it? December was a really busy month for me because I moved to Portland. Yeah, here I am. I made it. And a lot of stuff going on. Didn't really have time for video. I mean, I thought about it, but I was busy. I literally rented the moving truck for the day after Christmas. So, busy. Didn't even get to go home to Minnesota to see my friends and family. Now, I was going to try to do a video that's sort of Christmas themed. I kind of want to do a Christmas themed video every year, although I don't know, there's sort of a limited number of topics. And I was going to talk about what it means to be a Christian, but I decided to strike while the iron is hot. Warm, tepid. I decided to strike while the iron is tepid and talk about the Gillette commercial. By now you've all seen it, the infamous Gillette commercial featuring men being at least somewhat dickish to women and also to other men. Now there's been a lot of pearl clutching from a lot of men, mostly on the machismo-obsessed right, of course. They seem deeply offended at the idea of being asked to be nicer people. Now, personally, I thought the commercial was a little preachy and not very subtle, but it's hard to imagine being so deeply offended by a commercial whose basic message was, don't be an asshole. But many were offended, and I think I understand why, so I'm here to mansplain some of the nuances that I think those guys missed. First of all, you guys need to understand that there is a world of difference between masculinity and toxic masculinity. There's nothing at all wrong with being masculine. That's not what the commercial was criticizing. And it's just a little bit disturbing that some of you apparently think that what masculinity is getting into fights with your friends and talking down to women and beating up guys who don't fit your idea of what a man is. Let me just give you a working definition of toxic masculinity off the top of my head. Toxic masculinity is the idea that men are absolutely strictly forbidden from having or doing anything normally associated with femininity. The idea that men are not allowed to have or share feelings, for example. Toxic masculinity is the idea that any man who exhibits any hint of femininity must be immediately bullied and ridiculed and beaten. Toxic masculinity is ridiculing and beating other men for not being masculine enough, and ridiculing or beating women for not being feminine enough. It's okay to be a man. It's not okay to be an asshole. Let's look at some examples of the difference between masculinity and toxic masculinity. Masculine. Building and fixing things. Fine. Nothing in the world wrong with that. Now, right away I can hear some of the people on the left saying, but Tim, can't women build and fix things? Isn't that kind of masculine? Well, yeah, they can, and it kind of is. But who cares? Who gives a shit? I don't care. That's fine. I don't give a shit if a woman can build and fix things or any of these other masculine qualities that I've got listed here. So one example of masculinity is building and fixing things. If you're the sort of guy who knows how to fix his own car or fix the washing machine or the lawnmower, kudos. Great. Toxic masculinity. Bullying. Not all examples of being an asshole or a bully are toxic masculinity. It's usually based on gender. It's based on you're not masculine enough or you're too feminine or not feminine enough if you're a woman. I don't know. But in general, a lot of bullying is based on toxic masculinity. I saw this great Twitter thread where this guy talked about his 10-year-old son who, in every other respect, was a pretty normal, masculine, average boy. But he liked to paint his fingernails. It's just a thing he was into. He liked to paint his nails. Okay? But he stopped doing it because the other boys at his school teased the shit out of him for it. That is toxic masculinity. The idea that boys are not allowed to paint their nails or do anything associated with femininity. It's okay to have your own ideas of what's masculine and what's feminine. It is absolutely not okay to ridicule and bully and beat people who don't fit that. Another masculine quality, confidence. Women like a guy who's confident. There's nothing wrong with being confident. Toxic masculinity, beating your wife or girlfriend. That's generally, I have to prove that I'm a man. I have to control my woman. I have anger issues because my dad never hugged me or something. I don't know. Beating your wife or girlfriend is generally toxic masculinity. A couple of other masculine qualities: being capable and decisive. A guy who can take charge of a situation and get things done. Great, wonderful. That's the sort of man you are. Good for you. There's nothing in the world wrong with being capable and decisive. Toxic masculinity. Sexual harassment and sexual assault. It is in no way acceptable to flirt with a woman in a way that makes her feel uncomfortable, and a woman does not owe you anything. It is in no way acceptable to put your hands on a woman who hasn't given you permission. It's not acceptable to show your penis to a woman who didn't ask to see it. It is absolutely not acceptable to tell a woman what you would like to do to her. It's not acceptable to do or say anything to a woman that you wouldn't do or say to another man because it would be disrespectful to him. Treating a woman like an object instead of a person is not cool. That is toxic masculinity. Another masculine quality: being brave in the face of danger. Nothing wrong with that. Everybody loves a hero, right? Cool. Toxic masculinity: being condescending to women. If you talk down to a woman and assume that she doesn't know what she's talking about because she's a woman, that's toxic masculinity. That is being disrespectful to her based on her gender. Masculinity: being good at contact sports. Sure, you're a good football player, a good wrestler, maybe good at martial arts. Fine. That's pretty masculine. Nothing wrong with that. Toxic masculinity: as the commercial pointed out, the whole boys will be boys attitude. I'm not saying that no normal boy behavior is acceptable. It's the part where they get into fights and sort things out by punching each other. That's kind of toxic. You need to find more constructive ways to deal with your anger. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not a pacifist. I do believe that violence is called for, but it's supposed to be avoided. Punching is not supposed to be your go-to solution to a disagreement. Masculine: being physically strong. Again, nothing wrong with that. If you're a bodybuilder and you like being a beefcake, you're Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, great, fine, go ahead. Knock yourself out. Toxic masculinity: transmuting all of your emotions into anger. It's a myth that women are more emotional than men. Men are just as emotional. We just tend to lean toward the anger side of emotions. Our emotions tend to be more aggressive. That's how we deal with our emotions. We get angry at ourselves for having them, and so we transmute them into anger and hit someone or insult them or whatever. Women talk things out rather than punch each other, as you should. Another example of toxic masculinity: doing literally anything just to prove that you're a man. Don't do that. Don't do anything just to prove that you're a man. Don't give in to that pressure. The guys who are pressuring you to do something just to prove that you're a man, that's toxic masculinity. Being disappointed in your sons for not being interested in sports, that's toxic masculinity. If your son plays with Barbies and wants to be an artist instead of a football player, and you're disappointed in him, then there's something wrong with you, not him. Almost all homophobia is based on toxic masculinity. The idea that gay men are too effeminate and need to act more like manly men, yeah, that's toxic masculinity. And by the way, there are plenty of gay men out there who are more masculine than you will ever be. There are plenty of gay men out there who are hairy, beefy, muscular, bearded guys chomping on cigars, riding motorcycles, chopping down trees, and building log cabins with their bare hands. Guys who could kick your ass from here to next week, but they like dick. And that's fine. The profound need to prove that you are a man is toxic masculinity. The idea that being a man and proving it is very, very important is toxic masculinity. I'll give you an example. I kind of hate the taste of beer. I think it tastes like piss. I don't know how it's fit for human consumption. I don't know why anyone pretends to like it. Except I do. They feel like they have to like it to prove that they're men. I used to get so much shit when I was in my 20s from guys who were beer drinkers and didn't feel that I was masculine enough because I wasn't drinking beer. I'm sorry that I don't define my masculinity by my ability to drink large quantities of something that tastes terrible. I prefer to define my masculinity by my ability to drink what I want and not care what assholes think about it. Now, if you're a man watching this and you're thinking to yourself, wait a minute, Tim, I'm not that kind of asshole. I don't disrespect women. I don't bully other men for not being masculine enough. I'm a very live and let live kind of guy. Then the commercial wasn't talking to you. That's something these fragile snowflakes need to understand. The commercial wasn't talking about all men. It was talking about assholes. If you're not the kind of man who treats other men like shit for not being masculine enough, then the commercial wasn't really talking to you. If you are a man who is respectful to women and treats them well, the commercial wasn't really talking to you. I mean, it was talking to you in the sense that it's really up to us to teach the toxic ones not to be toxic. We have to do that. The toxic men are not going to listen to the women, so it's up to us. And the commercial was talking to us in that respect. The guys who are complaining about this commercial are just so fragile. That's what it is. It's fragile masculinity. Toxic masculinity is fragile masculinity. If you feel threatened and offended by this commercial, it's because your masculinity is fragile. A man who is truly secure in his manhood doesn't need to prove it to other men. Doesn't care what other men think about his manhood. You remember what I said earlier about confidence being masculine? The guys complaining about this commercial lack that confidence. A guy who is truly confident in his own masculinity and his manhood doesn't need to do all this toxic shit. Those guys are afraid of not being seen as masculine enough. They're afraid of being seen as weak. They're afraid to cry. Crying and masculinity are not mutually exclusive. I mean, if you cry at the drop of a hat, there may be a problem, but it's not one that you should be beaten for or bullied for. There are times when it is perfectly legitimate and okay to cry, but some guys hold it in, and they transmute that into anger and take it out on someone else. That is toxic masculinity. So yeah, the point of the commercial isn't to say that all things men do are toxic. The commercial wasn't attacking all men. It was only attacking the asshole men. The assholes who are super obsessed with being a man and proving that they're a man. If that's not you, then the commercial wasn't really talking to you. What is wrong with you that you could be so deeply offended at the idea of being asked to not be an asshole? What is wrong with you that being a better person is too much to ask? If you want to run around beating your chest and firing guns and drinking beer while watching football with your friends, fine. God bless you. Do what you like. But don't give shit to the guys who aren't interested in that. Yeah, I'm wearing a Seahawks jersey, but it's not because I give a shit about football. I don't. I just like jerseys. This is my pajama top, basically. I wear this around home. I've got my Seahawks jersey and sweats. That's my standard uniform when I'm home doing nothing. Toxic masculinity is not being okay with other men not fitting your idea of what a man is. To not be toxic is to have a live and let live attitude that says, hey, this guy doesn't like beer? Fine. There's nothing wrong with that. This guy doesn't watch football? Fine. Who cares? This guy likes to paint his nails? Whatever. Who cares? This guy likes to dress entirely in drag? I don't have no problem with that. That's fine. This commercial was not attacking masculinity. It was attacking toxic masculinity. It was attacking being an asshole because you're a man. That's all. I don't know how any of you could be offended by that. So, that's enough of that. Tell me what you think in the comments below. Do you understand the difference between masculinity and toxic masculinity? Do you think that it's too much to ask to not be an asshole? What do you do to combat toxic behavior in other men? Thank you very much for joining me for this conversation. If this is your first time on my channel, welcome. It's great to have you here. I hope that you will subscribe and join me for future conversations and check out my previous videos for more. If you are a current subscriber, welcome back. I'm sorry I've been away for so long. I still want to do this at least once a month. I'm thinking of doing another video for this month to make up for the fact that I didn't have any in December. Yeah, I'm still working on learning animation. I'm hoping to show you something like that by the summer, if not sooner. Yeah, and then thank you for your continued support. Thank you for sticking around despite the fact that I have been significantly less active lately. I will try to pick it up again. Thanks for joining me, everyone. See you next time.